Hey, Rainy Joe here, and this is 1001 Reviews, a series where I plan on reviewing every single album from the 1001 Albums Listened to Before You Die book. And today we are looking at the Fall's 1993 album, the Infotainment Scan. Fall released Infotainment Scan underneath the Permanent label, produced by various producers with art direction from Mark E. Smith, nationality UK, and a running time of 45 minutes and 57 seconds. I am only a little bit familiar with The Fall, so this will be mostly a blind reaction as I don't really know if I've heard any of their music before in passing. That being said, I have heard many good things, and I do know a lot of the artists that I do enjoy and listen to were influenced by The Fall to some capacity, so that does make this an intriguing listen for me. That being said, I'm not sure if this is their most well-received album, as I'm pretty sure their Live at the Witch Trials album is more popular than this one, and maybe some of the others as well, but I am looking forward to giving this one a listen. Now, this album on Spotify only has this expanded edition, but it is only 10 tracks long. As you can see, it ends with Light Fireworks. These are 2 bonus tracks, and then this is just a whole section of outtakes and whatnot. So we're just going to listen to the first 10, and that will be the listening portion. So let's just jump right in with Ladybird, Green Grass. Let's just start. Not really sure what to expect here. Almost like a post-punk type sound here. We're going to do blue for the album cover. I really like the drumming in this. It's very catchy but repetitive in a good way. This sound here that they're creating here feels very reminiscent of a lot of 2000s rock bands, especially the rock band Franz Ferdinand. Really brings me back to their sound. His vocals are very like monotone and droll, almost spoken word. I'm not sure how I felt about that as an opener. Kind of bland to me. I did like the very punchy sort of drums that repeated here, almost like a drum machine was in the works there, and the rough guitar was also quite nice, and his vocals again weren't bad in any sense. I just found this track to be quite repetitive for 4 minutes. It didn't really go into any direction that I found to be particularly that interesting. I'm gonna give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Next, we've got the track Lost in the Music. Let's go with Lost in the Music. 5 million streams, the most on this album. Very dizzying start to the song. A lot more coming into the mix than the first song, right off the bat. I don't find this to be as interesting as I would have hoped. Even the lyrics are kind of bland here, just being lost in the music and feeling alive. Is that it? Is that all there is to it? Here comes that dizzying sort of. I did not like that one either. Or at least I just felt pretty indifferent to it, which is kind of disappointing. I was expecting a lot more from this album so far. 2 tracks in. It's not looking too great for me personally. I really wasn't feeling anything there. I don't know if maybe there's just something I'm not clicking with here. But so far, this album is feeling a little bland to me. Maybe it would have been more cutting edge at the time of its release, but for today's modern day, from what I've already heard, it's really just not clicking too much. I do see some influences, or at least I see them influencing the music of the 2000s to an extent, but there really isn't much more beyond that I'm really grasping from this album. I'm gonna give Lost in the Music just a 5. I was meh to it. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't really enjoy it that much either. It's right in the middle. Next is Glam Racket. I guess this is a song about him taking out of his anger on somebody he might see as a lesser. This is catchier. Repetitive drum work here. Definitely a post sort of punk style to it. but it doesn't really have much development typically, it seems. I feel like the closest thing I can think of is like Public Image Limited, but lyrically they're more interesting than I've heard so far from The Fall. I do think there's a bit more to this one than the first two songs. It's just kind of repetitive. Yeah, I wasn't really feeling that one too much either. I mean, it was better than the first two tracks, but still, I really don't have much to say with these songs. I feel like they are rather bland. There's got to be something I'm missing here, because lyrically, it's not that interesting, and it's not that thematically interesting, at least from what I can gather so far. And stylistically and sonically, you know, what you hear in the first minute is kind of what you're going to hear for the next 3 minutes that is left in the song. Was not feeling Glam Racket that much, but I did like it more than Lost in Music. I'm going to give it a 6.5. No, I'll give it a 7. Next is I'm Going to Spain, 4th track. Let's just hope it picks up. I don't like the production on this either. I find the production as well to be rough, but not in a good way, not in like a in utero sense or something like that. More in like a Husker Du sense, which is just feels rather weak. Okay, this seems like it is a bit more substantive of a track, as the themes here of almost like this existential crisis. He's 34 years old. He's got rid of his car and he quit his job, and now he's going to Spain. Who wouldn't want to do that? Instrumentally too, it's a bit more interesting, the way it pulls back and stuff to highlight the lyricism. I like those synths as well. Those synths in the background, more on the right channel, are really interesting. Provides a nice backup. Just leaving his mom behind, he's leaving his whole family. It's a toxic masculinity thing coming in strong there. Alright, again, a bit more substantive of a track than the first three, but, you know, it's still not, you know, great in my opinion. I'm gonna give this one a 7.5. I do like the theme here, and it's a bit more lighthearted and fun of a track, and a little bit comedic as well. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. Comedic in the way that it seems like the narrator of this track seems to think that by leaving Spain and giving up on his life, things are going to get better. But I think that's kind of the humor here, is that, you know, it's not the surroundings that is bothering him. It is probably the inner person, but maybe I'm reaching. Next is It's a Curse, the 5th track. Halfway through the album already, and I'm only really digging one track especially, which was I'm Going to Spain. Let's see if It's a Curse carry on from that. Ooh, I like that. The guitar work on here is better. And more dizzying. So far, the music on this album is a bit tiring. Not really sure if that's the point, but it kind of just becomes way too repetitive within every track. I'm not really feeling it. Again, I don't know. Maybe is just something wrong with me? Is there something just not clicking with The Fall here? Let me know in the comments if maybe, you know, I'm missing the point, but it's just feeling kind of bland, repetitive, and not in the usual post-punk fashion of it being repetitive in like a way like, I don't know, like Iggy Pop's The Idiot would have been, or something like that, you know, or a Public Image Limited's sort of post-punk route is. You know, this just feels like a cheap imitation, I guess. Again, could just be this album. Maybe I'm being too hard on The Fall, but my expectations were, I guess, a little bit too high. Maybe that's the issue. I went into this with too high of expectations, knowing that The Fall is considered one of the better post-punk acts. But this isn't really hitting for me yet. I don't know. This is boring. This is a boring set of tracks, if I'm being honest. This drumming, I at first thought was going to be interesting with the way it loops, but man, I feel like I am trapped in some hellish landscape with the way it just continually loops the same drum patterns. 4. My apologies. It just feels pretty bland and derivative and generic of you know, other post-punk acts who are doing what they're doing here much better, or have done in the past much better. This one I'm really just not feeling any of this. Next is Paranoia Man in Cheap Shit Room. Paranoia Man already sounds like it would be an interesting concept. Who doesn't like a bit of paranoia in their music? I know I do. So let's just jump into this. Hopefully it's good. Hopefully I'm feeling it. I just don't really care for his vocals either. Mark E. Smith's vocals just feel like too monotone, too droll and bland. I'm not feeling the vocals. And lyrically, this all feels like I would normally love it, but I just think the performance is overall not that interesting. Getting a little funkier. I don't know. 5. I'll give it a 5. Next is Service. I just don't really like any of this anymore, if I'm being honest. It's feeling like a slog to get through. I'm kind of pushing myself at this point to try to enjoy it, you know? Maybe I'm not in the right mindset for something like this. But I'm not feeling it, which is a bummer. There's a lot of genres and stuff that like come into the fold, don't get me wrong, like, you know, it's just that none of it feels that interesting to me. It all feels kind of droll and bland and I guess soulless. Like there's like a funk element to it, there's some level of disco, I would say, and dance music. There's post-punk in it. There's a typical hard rock sense to it, but none of it is coming together that interesting. Much of this feels like, I don't know, Bowie's 90 input, which is to say I can take it or leave it. Like, does the singer even care? Does Mark E. Smith even care about the music he's making? Because he doesn't feel like it. His vocal delivery is so bland to me that it really distracts from anything that could be interesting within this album. He gives the same lifeless performance on every track here. Okay, Service, again, much of the same. You know, don't get me wrong, the dance and almost funkiness to it is definitely noted, but it's still, again, not enough to pull me out of this just bored rut that much of this album has put me in. Service is getting a 5 because it's just still, again, I can take it or leave it. I'm not hating it. You know I sound like I am, but I don't absolutely hate it. It's just disappointing to me, to be honest. So I'm giving that a 5. So next up after Service is The League of Bald-Headed Man. Amazing title, by the way, which, you know, should offer up something interesting. So hopefully The League of Bald-Headed Men will be interesting, because it just sounds like it should be. And I like this opening. There's moments within this album that are interesting. The repetitive deadpan sort of lifeless performances and whatnot here, I get it's the point, but sometimes some points just don't need to be made, I guess. Because this just doesn't feel like it has much life in it. And how can I enjoy it if it feels like they don't enjoy it? Like, there's humor to it, which is something, but the moments within this album that are interesting are sparse. So I'm going to give The League of Bald-Headed Men a 5. Again, I'm just feeling pretty indifferent to most of this. Is Past Gone Mad. See, there's stuff like this. Lots of drive. It's funky. It's groovy. It's, you know, it does feel kind of infectious. But I know, as soon as the vocals come in, that's when a lot of the life comes out. Very techno-infused. That's one of the funniest lines in this album so far. If I ever end up like Ian McShane, slit my throat with a kitchen tool. If I ever end up like U2, slit my throat with a garden vegetable. Why isn't there more humorous lines like that in the album? Maybe I just have missed them or they're going over my head, but man, that's hilarious. And his delivery there feels kind of reminiscent to Public Image's Limited singer when he sort of, I'm forgetting his name, but when he sort of went on these little tangents in his song that felt kind of just insane or schizophrenic. I'm liking this song a lot more. Kind of reminds me of some of Bowie's Earthling tracks. Very techno infused, which I like a lot. Very dizzying sort of track with how much is going on in it. I like this one far more. Just like that outro implies, this whole track is chaotic and almost evil and menacing, with great lines such as wanting to slit his own throat if he becomes like Ian McShane or U2, which I think are just humorous lines that are taking these very strong jabs at other celebrities and artists that I enjoy, even though I do think U2 definitely has their moments, and I think they get way too much hate, especially in this day and age. I do think I understand the idea here of losing your artistic merit to a sense. I'm going to give that one a 7.5. I still think much of what I'm hearing here isn't all that interesting. It is disappointing that the fall has not hit the mark that I want or that I expected, but that's okay. Pass Gone Mad, 7.5. Now here we are at the last track, Light/Fireworks. 3 minutes and 50 seconds, let's go. They use this sound a lot. A lot of the tracks start and end with that. This feels like a Radiohead, King of Limbs type of track. Very disturbing intro there. Felt very much like King of Limbs by Radiohead. A cold sound. Almost an acapella track. There's a very subtle instrumental in the underground there. Sounds like he recorded it with just a cheap microphone. Feels like a weird, almost nothing sort of track. Almost like an interlude. Definitely, like, moving into a more experimental direction with the way this is recorded. 3 minutes in and we're just starting, like this really intense instrumental. That does it for Light Fireworks. Much of this thing was kind of like an experimental track with Mark E. Smith performing his lyrics or spoken word like passages over this very faint, tinny instrumental. And then at 3 minutes in, this rampant sound comes in for about 30 seconds of instrumentals that ramp up quite a bit. But that being said, your typical post-punk stuff comes in the end there. It's not that interesting. I do think this feels more like an interlude track, but I'm going to give it a 6, as it is a bit more interesting than some of the other stuff I heard here. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I liked the beginning, too, like this very tinny, disturbed, almost computer voice coming in and repeating certain phrases. Felt very reminiscent of King of Limbs from Radiohead. So, I don't know. There's, I guess, some ideas and fragments of ideas within this track. But continuing with what I'm saying of, like, fragments and sparse moments of interesting or experimental sounds, this album could be described entirely as that. There are definitely some interesting concepts that come in throughout the tracks, but none of it ever feels like it carries throughout the entirety of a track. Most of it feels like it becomes a bit too redundant within the first couple of minutes and kind of loses focus. The instrumentals are your typical post-punk fare for the most part, with these very punchy and repetitive drums, but this does become quite bland and too repetitive as many of these tracks reach the 4-minute mark, and you kind of just heard most of the same thing for 4 minutes in a row. It is tiring, and to add to this tiring sort of sound, you have Mark E. Smith's vocals and lyrics, which lyrically can be quite interesting, but vocally he does recite these lyrics in a very deadpan spoken word passage sort of tone. And because of that, I don't find it all that interesting, and I do find it very difficult to get any enjoyment out of, as I just feel more tired as I hear it than I do interested or invested in it. Again, I do think The Fall has better albums than this one for sure, even though I haven't heard any of the other albums. I can't imagine them being, less than this, especially since I've heard great things of Live at the Witch Trials or some of their other work. So this one, really wasn't doing a whole lot for me, and I am looking forward more to hearing their other albums rather than this one, as, again, this was disappointing. But that all being said, this album's soft rating for me came in at a 5.9. Like I said, interesting moments, but an overall average album. And the hard rating is a 6, simply because, again, those interesting moments do make it somewhat worth, checking out if you're just mildly curious, I guess. But overall, this isn't a must listen for sure. Like, this definitely is not essential in my opinion. So it gets an NE for not essential. But that's okay, because The Fall does have, I think, 3 albums within this book. So hopefully one of their other 2 albums in here will draw me in more than this one. I'm hoping, at least, because I gotta be missing something. Anyways, that pretty much does it for the review portion of this video. Let's see what the next album we're listening to is in the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And like last time, I always call somebody, and today we're going to call my sister, Melissa. Hello?
You?
Hello?
You?
Can you do me a favor?
What?
Can you pick a random number between 1 and 1001?
Really?
Yeah.
333.
333.
Yep. Is this for your YouTube?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Save. Consider so. Yeah. 2001. Okay.
Yeah, that's all I needed. All right, bye.
Goodbye.
All right, so next is Young Americans by David Bowie. I love this album. Well, no, I don't love this album. Next is David Bowie's Young Americans, though, so I will review that next on this channel. So yeah, that pretty much does it for this video. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. If you want to follow along and listen to every album from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And as always, my name is Randy Joe, and I am signing off.